Hey, everybody. Tonight we're going to be talking about toxic people and toxic systems on Dug Up and Dusted Off. Hey, everybody. I'm so glad to be with you again this evening. Welcome to Dug Up and Dusted Off. Every Monday and Wednesday, we take about a half an hour. We dig something up, dust it off, look at it objectively, start to talk truth into it, and hopefully transformation happens in our hearts. And so I just welcome you tonight. We're going to be talking about something that's important, I think, and something that we all deal with, something that we've all been involved with at one time in our lives. And so I think it's going to be a pretty cool talk tonight. And I hope you'll want to participate. So, but I had a great weekend. I hope you guys had a great weekend. The weather was just incredible. Worship at Overcome was special. And we just had an incredible worship experience. We were invited. We have partnered with Paul and Candy Schumacher, who are missionaries for House of Hope, and they have done an incredible thing in Honduras. We've helped them build a feeding center. We've helped them. We give monthly to helping them feed children in that area. It has been. They came and we had just an incredible time. They came back into the States. We put them up and fed them and did all these things. But it was just really special to watch them share their love for this mission, and we're so proud of them and proud to be a part of it. So, had a great weekend, both on the north end and the south end, and just the people of Overcome are incredible. They're just super, super great people. So I could not be more proud of what is happening in the church. So I had a great weekend. Hope you had a great weekend. Tonight we're going to be talking about toxicity, toxic people and toxic systems, and removing toxicity from our lives. And it's important that we begin to really understand that we're a part of that in so many different ways. All right, and toxicity is a part of our culture and a part of everything that we deal with. And so we do deal with people that are toxic, and we do deal with systems that are toxic, workplace, other things that we are involved in that certainly can become toxic. And so again, I want you to participate in this. First of all, hit that heart or that like or that care emoji if I'm coming through okay, if you can hear me okay. I'd love to know if all the audio is working the way it should be. I always ask that. So hit that heart emoji, hit that like emoji. Let me know that I am coming through loud and clear to you. All right, good deal. So tonight, though, we're going to be, raw and real about this, but I do want to get one thing on the table really quick about what toxic people are. Just because you don't like somebody, just because you don't agree with somebody, just because they're not going to vote for the same president that you want to vote for, just because you might be mad at them, just because they might have fired you, just because of whatever, that doesn't make another human being toxic. You need to get over that quick. We live in a culture that wants to throw out words like racism, narcissism, like we're throwing out molecules of air, just like spaghetti on a wall. We will label people in our culture today like I've never seen before. And just because you might not agree with me doesn't make me a racist, doesn't make me toxic, it just means we disagree on subjects. It just means we have different points of view, and that's what makes living in America great. If you are attractive, if you are successful, if you are confident, if you demand a certain level of excellence, if you are type A and want things done a certain way, it doesn't mean that you're a narcissist. It just means, or toxic, or a racist. It just means that you are probably really good at what you do. And so, I think we label people in such a way that it loses the meaning of what we're really trying to talk about. And when we talk about toxic people and toxic relationships, that's a very serious thing. All right, it's a very serious thing and a very damaging thing, and so I want us to be clear about that. Okay, again, just because you might not like a human being, just because you might disagree with them, just because whatever you might have with that human being doesn't make that human being toxic. Let me give you the definition of toxicity. All right, toxicity is the degree to which a chemical substance or a particular mixture of substances can damage an organism. All right, I'm going to repeat that. Toxicity is the degree to which a chemical substance or a particular mixture of substances can damage an organism. So, what we're saying about toxic people is that we're dealing with certain people that do certain things that then begin to damage irreversibly, in a lot of cases, the majority of the time, another human being, another heart, another spirit, and whatever you want to talk about. We really need to understand the seriousness of that kind of toxicity that we're talking about. A toxic system that damages a human being, a toxicity, a person's behavior that damages another human being, like damages another human being to where their behavior is altered, to where their spirit is altered. When women are being abused, the very first sign that people look for, especially that I look for, excuse me, I've got something in my eye, is that when a woman is abused in a relationship by a husband, and I'm just using this as an example, that one of the first telltale signs is when they're being abused is that they will be very talkative around you, but when the husband enters the room, they clam up instantly. That's the sign of emotional, verbal, and physical abuse. You might not be able to see the wounds, but when that happens, that's a telltale sign in a lot of cases. When a person's mood is altered, when a person's personality is altered because of toxic behavior from another human being, now we're getting into real toxicity. Okay. Not that, again, this nonsense about you not liking somebody, not liking somebody's policy, not liking somebody, because they're making you do something at work or because they're making you do your job or asking you to work hard that's not toxic people. That's just you not being able to handle disagreements and differences. All right. We're talking about toxic people that are being so abused. All right. And so hurt by another human being, they're altering their personality, their behavior, et cetera. And that is a serious, serious thing. I'd like to ask you, honestly, right now, can you name in your own experience maybe some toxic behavior that you've run into, some things that have really stood out for you in your life? And some of us have led really long lives, all right, and some of us have not been in the game a whole. I've led a really long life, and honestly, I cannot say that I have met too many toxic people. I mean that really have injured me in that way. I mean, very, very, very few people that I have met that have hurt me in that way. And again, these are, I believe, things like, I believe politics. All right. I mean, I believe that there was a place, let's talk about toxic systems for a second. Okay. Toxic systems like politics are very real right now in our culture. That used to not be the case. Let's just go back as to where Clinton and Gingrich were in power. Gingrich being the Speaker of the House and Clinton being the president. I mean, they worked together. You might not have agreed with Clinton. You might not think he was a good person. You might not have thought Gingrich was a good person, but they at least were able to work together. The level of hatred was measured, and there was just a level that was unacceptable. All right, whether it was from the media, whether it was from people, and they were actually able to work it together. Now we have a political system that I believe is toxic. Now we have a political system that is involved in cancel culture, that's involved in rioting, that's involved in hurting other people, that's involved in silencing the other people. And I mean, can you imagine living in a toxic system like that? Think of the politicians that live in a toxic system like that. And you hear, I mean, for 4 years, one side has to hate the other side so horribly that's all they do day in and day out, maybe for 4 years and maybe for 8 years, until they become the person in power. But some people thrive on this toxicity, this hatred, and this horrible place. But I believe that the majority of people out there want to be in a system, want to be in a workplace, want to be in a relationship that brings abundance. And I think that that's important for us to understand, and more so that my Lord wants me to have abundance, wants you to experience abundance. I came to give life and give it abundantly, he tells us. And I believe he wants that for everybody. Now, before we go on, I mean, if you're tracking with me, hit the like button real quick. Just if you're tracking with me, if you're hearing what I'm saying, hit that like button for me. Let me know that you're still with me. And because this is a sensitive situation, because a lot of people have been involved in some really very, very bad things. All right. Yeah, Susan, dealing in divorce care, sure. And we're gonna talk about that in a second. Yeah, it's that is certainly a horrible place where people get involved in. But I think before we go into sort of saying, okay, how do we identify it and how do we get it? Well, we've identified it already because it is serious, and yet we've made the little things as if they were serious. And I want us to be adults about that. I don't want to go back over that again. You know what? Put your big boy pants on and your big girl pants on, and realize that, the little disagreements, and might not like somebody, that doesn't make that a definition of a toxic human being. Those are just disagreements. But let's admit one thing first. We've all been in a place where we have been involved in a toxic relationship, but we've also been the giver of toxicity. Okay? Please understand that you, in some point in shape, fashion in your life, you have been the giver. Now, there are all levels of that toxicity. It might not have been to the place where you altered another human being, but we have, been there and done that in some shape, form, or fashion. However, this is what I will say about that: 9 times out of 10, where you were, where the disagreement occurred, didn't rise to the level of toxicity yet, because 9 times out of 10, a human being will go to another human being and say, hey, what? You hurt me. You hurt me. You hurt me, and we need to talk about this. 9 times out of 10, if we handle things biblically, okay, right off the bat, before anything else happens, before all of a sudden someone posts something on Facebook, before it goes through the rumor mill, before the false allegations are made, before all these things happen, 9 times out of 10, whether it's with an employee, whether it's with a friend, whether it's with a employer, whatever it is, those things get worked out, guys. They get worked out. And even after they don't get worked out, at least you say, okay, let's just agree to disagree. I know the rules here. I know what the boundaries are. I know what all these things are. Let's just move forward and act like adults. All right. 9 times out of 10, that happens. All right. And what we do is we turn toxicity from being toxic. We turn a situation from being toxic into a situation that can be a triumph, or a situation that can be a testimony. All right. And then by doing that, I mean, this happens in the workplace all the time. You got a boss, or you got an employee that's not, that's constantly undermining, the people around them. But if that's handled and nipped in the bud, I was always late in nipping stuff like that in the bud, and I let it fester, and I let it, because I didn't want, it took me years to come around to, to actually holding people, accountable. But if it's done quickly, all right, quickly, whether it's in a workplace or in a relationship, man, you become an example. Well, they did that in responsibly. They did that in love. They handled that in the way it should have been handled, and all of a sudden, systems grow out of that. But when toxicity is allowed, when a situation is allowed to fester, it becomes toxic, and then it starts to seep into the lives of other people. And so, I think, not in this culture that we live in today, there is no talking. There is just accusing. There is no conversation. There is only, the mudslinging. There is my way and no other way, and that is going to. And if you're in a relationship like that, if you're in a situation where you're not being heard at all with an employer, or as an employer, you're not being received by employees, there is a place where mediation can come in. Things can happen to get people to sit down at the same table and to work it out. Okay. 9 times out of 10. But if you're in a toxic relationship, I think this is important. You need to know you have permission to get out. You have permission to say, you know what, enough's enough. I've tried. All right. I've tried to sit down. I've tried to communicate. I've tried to let the other person hear what's been hurting me. I've tried to identify the behavior. I've tried to do all of these different things. I've been biblical about this thing. Haven't gone on Facebook. Haven't gathered my troops. I haven't lied about it. I haven't exaggerated it. I haven't come back 6 years later and made I haven't done any of that stuff. I nipped it in the bud right then and there. Okay. Because it was that important. And if all that fails, then you need to give yourself permission to leave, and permission to honestly say, you know what, enough's enough. If you have a problem with your brother or sister, go in love, address it. That solves absolutely so much. Yeah, you're right, Sherry, it does. But toxicity and charities, I'm trying to tell me what that means to you, Kevin. Toxicity and charities. I'll wait for your comment there. What that might mean. I'm popping over to see over on this board. If toxicity, Julie, is in your family, that can be a really horrible experience, and especially if it's a marriage. That can be just an absolute nightmare. And Tammy, if if you've really dealt with a toxic person, again, somebody, and a lot of times these toxic people are purposely doing things to undermine you, to hurt you, to bring you, to alter your behavior, to really bring harm to your life, then the difference for sure. People make mistakes. That's not toxicity. That's just making a mistake. But again, Tammy, that you're absolutely right. You realize the difference, and people are stuck. Okay. People are stuck in toxic relationships. Okay. First of all, let me go back to that. You have permission to leave a toxic relationship. But what happens is, when I say that to a human being, especially somebody who's married or somebody who's at a workplace, after what they allow the toxicity to do is they allow it to take root in their lives. And so what happens is that leads to codependency. All right. And codependency can be a dangerous thing, because what happens is we start to make excuses for the other person's bad behavior. All right. If you're in a relationship with a toxic person, especially somebody that you love, and that person is toxic, and that person is hurting you, that person tends to abuse your love, your desire to want to serve, and to want to help, and to want to make the relationship work. And a lot of time guilt is involved in that. A lot of time, well, basically guilt. A lot of times, they turn a faith relationship into what have you done for me lately? And what happens is we get into a cycle, especially the person that's being abused. What happens is we get into a cycle where we want to please the other person because we love them, and all of a sudden, when we don't love them, that toxicity reminds us of what we haven't done. The guilt sets in. We try harder then to please that human being. They then allow guilt to set in. The toxicity of guilt sets in, and so we get into a cycle. But then they reward us. Okay, then they reward. And all of a sudden we're like, okay, goodness, I got it right. And so we sort of overlook all the toxic moments and we hang on to the reward because we love that person. And so we become codependent, and eventually we live in a cycle of codependency of wanting to please, and no matter at what cost, ignoring the bad behavior, and a lot of times enabling the bad behavior. And we get stuck in what is really a vicious cycle. And what happens then is this, and this is the insidious thing, is that the relationship isn't two equal people, but the relationship becomes one that's dominant and one that's subservient. All right. The relationship becomes one, and generally the one that's toxic becomes dominant, and the one that's being abused becomes subservient. And when anybody has too much power, I'm going to say this, you might disagree with it, you might not. Anybody that has too much power in anything, whether it's a relationship, whether it's in a system, whether it's in the church, whether it's in the business, whether it's in a corporation, whatever structure or system you're working in, I guarantee you there will be abuse. Any one person that has too much power, there will be abuse. And generally, if that person is toxic, that abuse just runs rampant. All right. And again, those power dynamics become so delicate and so hurtful in a lot of ways that we are unable to get out of it. Now, especially if you're in a toxic system, in a workplace environment, you can be held. You will allow bad behavior because A, you need the job. B, you don't want it. You're scared to go out and back out into the workplace. You're scared to move out to do something on your own. You're scared to do whatever you are, and you will just take abuse. And in fact, even if you're not the one being abused, you're not going to say a thing because that person holds power over you as well, and you're not going to say anything to upset the balance there. You do not want to be the focus of that toxicity at all. And so, again, and I've always looked at toxic people as just bullies, just flat out bullies, and people that have, and remember, we do make mistakes because of the events of our life. I mean, we've been bullied, let's say, we've been hurt as a child, we've been even physically abused. I mean, certainly out of that pain, we do things, but this takes it to another level where people are really just live their life in that sort of bully system. We've all experienced it. I've experienced it in my workplaces. I've experienced it in relationships. You've experienced it as well. But the key thing I believe is there's a place where you can say it's time to move on. That the Lord that lives within you says, I want you to live in abundance. I don't want you to live in this cycle of pain. I don't want you to live in this cycle of guilt any longer. I don't want you to live in this cycle of risk reward, let's say. I want you to go and enjoy the only one life that you have. And honestly, I saw someone on social media say, you know what, I'm just moving. I'm moving out west. And I'm said, I'm done with it. I'm done. I've lived a chapter here, but I'm moving. I'm starting a new chapter. And a lot of times to get away from the toxicity, you do have to move on. You have to close a chapter to a life, and you have to open a new chapter to a new life. I don't mean to interrupt that thought. I wanted to see what Kevin was saying because I really wanted to talk about that, where people go in thinking that they know what the needs are, throwing a fix in, take a photo, and going home. Yeah, I get that, Kevin. That happens so much, doesn't it? And it leaves the people that are in real need, uh, feeling like it was just a photo op in a lot of ways. And that's sad and unfortunate. I think that's the reason when we do ministry, we want to get to know the people. We want to be involved in their lives and involved in transformation in their lives. And I think that's why it takes just so many small groups to do that and to be a part of that. So yeah, I've seen that and I've experienced that for sure. Sherry says boundaries are essential. Protect your heart, mind, spirit, and time. Yes, um, boundaries are critical. Uh, Explain, Marilyn, what's the difference between boundaries and unforgiveness. Now, let me say this about toxic people. When I say that it's time to, when I say it's you have permission to leave that relationship, I also said that it's only after you've tried to reconcile it. And I'm talking to people that I know are being abused. I'm talking once you know that this thing cannot go on any longer, it's time to leave. It's time to go. You know that you have permission to leave. And it's time not to feel guilty about leaving. It's time not to feel, well, what would happen to the other person if I left? What could happen to that workplace and work environment if I left? A lot of times we get this martyr syndrome going in our life and we think that we're the only reason this thing is being held together. We start to think about what other people might think about us if we left that relationship. It There are 1,000 things that go through our mind that 1,000 things have gone through my mind over the course of my 50 years as I've dealt with people. But you know what? Once you make the decision to leave, it'll be the best decision you ever made. And again, that's only after. And yes, forgiveness comes into that. Yes, forgiveness must occur in that. And I think forgiveness takes time. I think the worst time is when after you've left, the other person doesn't want it to be over. So that can happen as well. And that can certainly be a problem as you heal and as you move forward in your own life. Yeah, it's so I think forgiveness is key as you start to unstick yourself from a very, very toxic person or a very toxic system. Let's be honest, those people in those systems cause a lot of pain. I mean, and a lot of times I think it's not that the pain will ever go away. And I'm not talking about, hey, look, if you didn't do your job and you got fired, that's on you. I'm not talking about if you screwed something up and you didn't go and work it out, that's on you. If you decided to go and make a molehill into a mountain and elaborate and do all that, that's on you. I'm not, you know what, grow up, get a life, and move on. But I'm talking about the real serious situations where people hurt one another, where that wound is so deep that just deep in your spirit it's never going to go away. And we all have to deal with our own pain and grief. It's no different than losing someone that you love, someone that dies or someone that, whatever that looks like. Grief, is a real thing. But a lot of times, if you've dealt with a toxic situation or a toxic work environment, you do need to speak to somebody. You cannot do that on your own. The Lord has created really smart human beings to help you work through those things. I've done that in my own life. I've had to talk to people. I've had to understand, listen, I can't do this on my own. I have to be in the care of somebody else to move through this. And all of a sudden, forgiveness and that care come together. And you're able to start to move on. You're able to start not just to baby step and not just to walk, but you're able to start to run and start thriving again in a very, very powerful way. And then forgiveness feels good. Then you bump into that toxic person. That person ain't ever going to change. And you just, you look at them and say, you know what, hey, goodbye. Good to see you. Good to see you go. But the pain's not there any longer. It just doesn't exist. And I'm an example. I'm a testimony to that. in my own life over the last 2 years and over the last 50 years of my life. We all have people that have hurt us. We've all had people that continue to hurt us, even though they're not in our lives any longer. And again, there's a place of great healing for you and a great testimony and triumph as you then move on and stand on top of a different mountaintop to shine in a different way. And again, I think part of that is giving yourself permission to do that, and realizing, you know what, leaving a job, you will find freedom outside of toxic systems. You will find freedom outside of toxic relationships. You never realized how free you can be. The toxicity could still exist. It might still seep in at times. The residual effects of all of that pain and all of that hate and all that stuff that you went through might linger a little bit, but I guarantee you, even if it lingers, the ability to be free. I mean, you just go watch Braveheart. At the very freedom, all right, is on the other end, and that's exactly what God wants you to experience. I'm trying to read some of these. Forgiveness is key to move on to the next chapter in your life. Feels good. Amen, Stacy. I think sometimes, Sherry says, I think sometimes forgiveness can only happen when we are removed from the toxic. Yeah. Toxicity clouds our ability to see the real issue and then process and forgive. Yeah. Yeah, you're forgiving the person as a child of God, not the action they did. Yeah, Kevin, that's a good point. I think a lot of times we get hung up on what they did. And I think when we look deeper into the person, a lot of times toxic people are made that way, not born that way. And, and I think that there can be forgiveness because that person is a human being. And I certainly know that Jesus forgives us. Even in our own toxicity, he looks at us and says, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. And, I think that that's a great statement for us to remember. In fact, that might be a healing statement for us. As people hurt us, undeservingly, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. I mean, a lot of people don't know what they're doing when they engage in this. A lot of people that jump into narratives and jump into toxic narratives and toxic stuff that's happening in the lives of other people, shame on you for doing that. I mean, I'm gonna call you out right now. Shame on you for doing that. You have no idea. You're just jumping in, pouring gasoline onto the fire. And you have when you could have been an instrument of healing, you decided to be an instrument of hate and division and toxicity. So shame on you. You know what? You're going to have to deal with the Lord on that one. But because you knew what you were doing there, that's going to require a lot of asking to be forgiven for that. But there are a lot of people that really are hurt. There are a lot of people that really come out of a lot of pain that think what they're doing is right. And forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. I think that's healing for me. That makes it not nearly as hurtful any longer. But again, every situation is different. Everything is different. Every person, every job place is different. And so I'm going to leave you with this, okay? Let me leave you with this. Maybe tonight, if we do anything else, maybe tonight we can learn the difference between real toxicity and just everyday strife that we deal with. That we know that we're going to get with our job. We know we're going to get with people. We know that we're going to run into with our spouses and our kids and all these different in relationships in church and all this different stuff. Maybe we should just understand and learn the difference that, you know what, there is a difference. And maybe we need to start recognizing that difference more often. Because when we recognize that difference, we then know how to handle those things differently. Amen? All right. And then once you recognize what a real toxic situation looks like, then you start to apply the biblical steps. Go to that person. Make it clear. Make it crystal clear. Take a witness with you to make it even more clear. Whatever it takes, give it some time. But again, if there's physical abuse, I'm going to say get out right now. That's beyond toxic. That's just evil. Get out right now. Run for your life. Call the authorities. Get out of that relationship. But 9 times out of 10, I believe that, again, if handled quickly, handled early. Strife does not rise to the level of toxicity any longer, but can be resolved. And relationships might not necessarily, you might not be best friends with that person, but you certainly can continue to be in a working relationship with people. It's interesting, and it's interesting to hear professional athletes that they win championships together, but you realize they hated each other. The coach hated them, they hated the coach, but they were able to still come together, okay, to work together for a common goal. And I think Christians need to learn that. I mean, just because we're Christians doesn't mean we're going to like each other. Just because you're clergy, don't mean you're going to like all the other clergy. Just because whatever it looks like. But if you can learn to work together and respect one another, then I think you solve a lot of problems. I think you solve a lot of problems. Let me see what else is going on here with Julie. Jim must have used the spray. Voice still going strong at 8:30. Yeah, I did use the spray, Julie. Thank you so very much. Oh, that's Sherry saying to Julie. But yes, I did use the spray. Delicious. Thank you. Still going strong, man. I'm not going to go any longer because I want to respect our time together. But listen, I want to say hello to some people. Sherry, good to see you as always. Kevin, great having you on. The hardest person to forgive is yourself. Oh, amen, Kevin. Yeah. A lot of times it is. A lot of times it is. Kevin, great. Love you, brother. Stacy, so good to see you. Marilyn, love you dearly. Marilyn, love you, my friend. I hope y'all are feeling well. Jennifer, great to have you on tonight as always. Madeline, love you dearly. Good to see you. Laney, love you, my friend. Missing you, Laney. Come back to church. Missed you Sunday. And yes, I did notice. Susan, great seeing you on. Thank you for your love for Overcome. Who else? And all the people that were watching that didn't make comments, thank you for being on today. And Julie Sanders, always a pleasure to have you on and Dug Up and Dusted Off. Tammy, great seeing you again, always. Love you dearly. Guys, know this, that toxic relationships, toxic people, toxic systems, a lot of it can be overcome. It's just a simple thing called a conversation. And you know what? I believe in my experience and some things that I should have done earlier. A lot of the relationships could have been saved. But they still can be saved with a little bit of forgiveness, an open heart, and a lot of love. But there's some that can't. And give yourself permission to leave. Give yourself permission to walk. Give yourself permission. You know what? Find that new job. Find that new system to work in. Go and create your own system. That's what I did. Go create your own system, but find somebody awesome like Sherry to do it with. And, and surround yourself with awesome people. Doesn't mean you're going to disagree. Doesn't mean you're not going to disagree. You will disagree. But your disagreements will turn into triumphs and testimonies, I promise, because of love. Hey, listen, we love you. Just know that the Overcome Church is there for you at any time, any place. We are here for you. We've got a great group of people. We have got a great church that wants to love a broken world. So if you're looking for that church, come and be a part of it. And certainly if you are an overcomer, share that good news. Hey, remember, dig it up, dust it off. And know this, that the Lord loves you and he wants abundance for you every single day. I cannot wait to see you again. Oh, we got Tuesday at 6:30. We got Stronger Together Tuesday at 6:30. We are doing we are starting a radio show out of Stronger Together, but we need a name for our radio show. So be thinking of that. There is a winner that will be announced, but I will see you at 6:30 on Stronger Together with Sherry. And again, Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Cannot wait to see you again. God bless you. We love you. Bye.